PowerG, probably one of the coolest, most amazing sensor technologies that's been created. For years, I guess it's been 20, 30 years, security sensor technology hasn't really evolved. It was originally created for the military years ago. It's been shrunken down to be used for small residential applications and small business applications and things. But that same wireless technology, the same wireless protocols have been around for decades. And they haven't really improved on it. And there's some inherent flaws with them. The first flaw is the lack of encryption. It's actually been a really good technology. The fact that it's stuck around for 20 plus years, it's pretty impressive.
Right. Yeah.
It hasn't changed much, but at the same time, it hasn't needed to change much. It's been really, really effective. Until recently, when some of the cyber threats have kind of surfaced. Okay? Hackers, people trying to get in and circumvent the security system. People are recognizing and knowing now that with just some basic devices, you can hack a security system pretty easily.
Scary.
Yeah, it is. Are you familiar with a replay attack?
No. Tell me how it works.
So a replay attack is basically where someone buys a $10 to $20 device. They call it a software-defined radio. That's the official term for it. But it's basically a little device that they buy that allows you to mimic and read and copy the sensor signals, the wireless signals sent by a security device.
So is that when you open a door and it says door open?
Yeah. So you open a door and, this sensor sends a little bit of information through the air wirelessly to the panel and says, I'm open. When you close it, it sends another one that says, I'm closed. And that's how the system knows whether the door is open, because this little sensor will broadcast. Now, traditional security sensors don't have any layer of encryption on them, which means that the signal that's sent from this sensor to the panel, there's nothing protecting it, nothing stopping it from the air.
And that's where that device comes into play then?
Yeah, so if you have a device that can record those signals, because the signals are not scrambled at all, they're just open for anybody to hear and listen to. It used to be those software-defined radios cost $10,000 and were illegal. Now they cost $10. They're still illegal, but they're way cheaper. And if you Google software-defined radios, you Google, you go on YouTube and look up, replay attacks, you'll find things, and people will teach you how to do these things. So it's really important that we as security professionals are protecting our customers by installing encrypted sensors whenever possible, because the signal that's sent through the air from this to the panel, if it's not encrypted, those signals can be captured, and then what the person does is they replay them. So you think about the damage that a door open signal can really do. Well, if you're at home, your system's not armed, and someone replays your door open signal, what happens? Your panel says door open. And you go, door's not open. What's going on here? I don't know, no big deal. But imagine that same scenario when your system is armed and you're sleeping at night. What would happen if someone replayed a door open signal? What would your panel do?
It would go off.
It would go off, yeah, right? The siren would go off, and you're going around going, what's going on?
Yeah.
You're looking, your front door's not open, no one's breaking in, but, and then the central station's coming over the two-way voice and saying, hey, is everything okay? And you're like, I think it's okay. No one's broken in my front door, so I guess I'm okay. And then what would you do? I mean, it's 1 o'clock in the morning.
I probably wouldn't arm it again.
So they just convince you not to arm your system.
Yeah.
By just simply copying with a $10 device, copying that little bit and saying, oh, I'm going to convince Kelsey not to open it. And how would they know, or not to arm her system? And how would they know not to arm that you didn't arm your system? By playing the door open signal again, and this time the alarm doesn't go off. They're like, oh.
They can walk right in.
Let's go on in and go pay Kelsey a visit.
Scary.
Yeah, it's pretty terrifying.
Yeah.
And the fact that it can happen so easily. Now imagine instead of the door open signal, imagine it's a key fob. What can your key fob do?
Disarm my system.
So if they copy the disarm signal being sent through the air that is unencrypted, they literally disarm. So you drive away to go to work, and they disarm the system and come inside your house and rob you blind, and you would never know.
Yeah.
Or even worse, they disarm the system when you're at home, asleep in bed. And rather than getting that nice early warning of your alarm going off, instead, they're standing over your bed. Yeah, it can be pretty terrifying. Yeah. So a replay attack is a real thing. And if you Google security system hack, you look at the things that are in the news, this is a real thing that could happen. Is it happening a lot? Not a lot. But it's happening enough that we know that all security sensors need to be encrypted.
Right.
Especially the important ones. Now, in another video, you probably watched and saw how we talked about how you can make a choice and talk with your customer about which security sensors they want to encrypt versus which ones they don't. If you're doing a fresh new install, you should probably encrypt everything. But if it's a takeover, you're going into a system and saying, hey, we're going to replace your old system, whether it's one of your own customers or you're taking over, a system from another company and adding new things to them, try and encrypt as many sensors as you can, and whichever ones you can't, then you can
do it later.
Yeah, do it later. And that's the hope, is that you would eventually upgrade all the customer sensors to encrypted sensors. Okay.
Right.
So encryption is pretty important. Now, we have with our S-line radio a layer of encryption on 319.5. So that's at least better than
Not having
it.
Right.
Good is having a security system altogether, but it's better to have a layer of encryption. Right. Now, if you want the best, you go PowerG. PowerG is incredible, and this is just one example of a PowerG sensor. Look how thin that is.
It's really pretty.
It's a really pretty little sensor. It's a really
it is.
thin, small, it's just a good-looking sensor.
Yeah, I agree.
This sensor has 4 times the range of a regular security sensor. So that was another drawback of the legacy technology, is that the sensor technology was unencrypted, but it also didn't go very far.
So you needed additional sensors, right, to make the range farther.
Yeah, you get what's called a range extender. And that range extender allowed you to take a panel that couldn't reach, a security sensor that couldn't reach the panel, and say, I'm going to put a little device between you that will basically pass the signal along. It's like that game Telephone, right? It's like, door open. And then you would tell the panel, door open.
Okay.
Yeah?
But this is eliminating it.
Exactly. You wouldn't need that because this sensor goes 4 times the range. So whether it's a garage out back, a detached garage, a shed somewhere on the property, things like that, this will go tremendously far.
That's really far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 4 times the range, and it's got 2-way encryption. Now, right now, this 319.5 sensor, it's got a layer of encryption on it, which means that when it sends a signal saying door open, it scrambles it up through the air. Then when it gets to the panel, it's scrambled, and the panel knows how to unscramble it. Someone trying to copy that signal to use it as a replay attack, they won't be able to interpret that signal. Okay? This one not only scrambles that signal there, but it can also receive signals. If the panel wanted to tell this S-line sensor something, it couldn't do it because this sensor only sends. It doesn't have ears. All it has is voice. It just speaks. Here's what's door open, door closed.
But this has both. This
one has both. This can send and receive signals. Now, the reason that's important is you might want to make adjustments to the sensor. You might want to do something. Let's take a motion sensor, for example.
Okay.
You install a motion sensor with certain levels of non-pet sensitivity because you don't have pets. You want it to be nice and secure. Then you buy a dog and you want pet sensitivity. Well, you could send a technician out to the house and adjust the motion sensor manually from the panel or from the motion sensor. Or you can go online, log into the account, and actually make that adjustment online without rolling a truck.
Wow.
So 2-way encryption is pretty nice.
Yeah.
The other thing it does is it allows the panel to query the sensor's status. If you wanted to, instead of waiting for the sensor to say, I'm open, I'm closed, you could have the panel ask the sensor, hey, how are you doing? Is everything okay? Is your battery working? Are you in a tampered state? Are you open? Are you closed? Things like that. The panel can actually see that stuff because it can ask the sensor what it's doing, and the sensor can then respond.
That's cool.
So
It's
two-way communication. Two-way communication is really, really nice.
Yeah.
And it's encrypted both ways, okay? And it's encrypted with banking level encryption. So the same encryption you have at your bank account, on your credit card, things like that, that's the same level of encryption that this has. It's military-grade encryption. The other thing this has is automatic signal adjustment. So I want you to remember back in college, did you ever have one of those classes where it was kind of like a big amphitheater? Okay. Where did you sit in those classes? In the front or the back?
I'd like to say the front, but it was the back.
Troublemaker.
No.
Okay. So the people sitting in the front, like you, would, if you had a question for the professor, you could simply just say, hey, professor, what is pi, or whatever. And he'd be able to tell you right there. And he wouldn't have to yell. You wouldn't have to yell. The people in the back, like me, sitting all the way up in the back, if I wanted to ask that same question, if I asked him in the same noise, the same voice level you did, he wouldn't hear it. I'd have to yell it. The same thing goes here. So a sensor that doesn't have automatic signal adjustment is always yelling no matter what, just to make sure the signal goes through. Now, if this sensor is only a foot or two away from the panel, it's using its full strength to get to the panel. And that's the way traditional security sensors work. It uses its full strength to get to the panel. no matter what, because it needs to make sure that even if wherever it's placed, it's going to have signal. This one knows, because it's got two-way encryption, it says, hey, or two-way communication, it says, hey, I'm only a few feet away from the panel. And it actually has 3 different levels, and will say, because I'm so close, I can use less battery, I can emit less RF noise, radio frequency noise, into the atmosphere, and therefore I'm not going to pollute the air with wireless signals, and I'm also not going to waste battery level because I only need it there. Now, if it's way in that detached garage,
then it's going to yell.
it's going to yell.
Okay.
Exactly. So that automatic signal adjustment saves battery and reduces RF noise is what we call it. So nice little nice feature. The last feature that's great about these devices is interference circumvention. Wireless signals, as they communicate on different frequencies, if you get 2 things talking at one time, it messes things up. You ever had a set of walkie-talkies? And as you talk on walkie-talkie, if someone else has a walkie-talkie in the same room, what happens?
That was the worst.
Screeches, and it's messing up and things like that, and it never comes through clearly, right? This automatically knows, hey, there's some interference on my channel, and it switches channels. All security sensors have one channel to choose from. And so if there's interference on the channel, it just means that that's the way it goes. You got to deal with it. But this has 50 different channels. PowerG uses 50 different channels, and if there's ever interference on one, it will automatically switch to a different channel to make sure it's always sending signals clearly.
So it's always looking for the clearest.
64 times a second, this thing is looking for the most clear channel to make sure it's always got a nice clear pathway to the panel. Yeah. So we call that interference circumvention. So it's going to automatically circumvent any type of interference that's coming in. If there's things on the channel, maybe you bought a microwave that happens to broadcast on the same thing, or a cordless telephone, or a, some new little Wi-Fi device, or whatever it is. Whatever happens to be that might be creating some signal noise in the same band that this is, the same radio station this is, it just hops over to a different one. So in a nutshell, PowerG is the most powerful sensor technology you can have. It's got 4 times the range of legacy security devices. It's got automatic signal adjustment to save battery and reduce RF noise. It uses 2-way encryption, military-grade encryption, that is banking level encryption, 128 AES encryption, and interference circumvention to make sure that you don't have any problems getting your signal to and from the panel. And there's a really robust library of PowerG devices. PowerG has been around for a few years now. It's mainly been used in commercial. So there are a lot of motion sensors, door sensors, all sorts of different devices, smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors. You've got a full portfolio to look at when you're considering this. And PowerG is included in every single IQ Panel 2 Plus, and along with the dual SRF feature of being able to use either 319.5, 345, or 433, depending on what the home might already have.